The marble floors were always cold. Chioma had learned that in her first week living in the Kim estate. No matter how expensive the imported rugs, no matter how much the chandeliers cost more than small countries, the cold always found its way through. Just like the emptiness in her marriage. She sat at the edge of their king-sized bed, watching Min-jun button his shirt with mechanical precision. His back was to her, as always. The morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows cast shadows across his broad shoulders, highlighting the tension he carried like a second skin. 3 years. 1,095 days of waking up beside a man who treated her like expensive furniture. Beautiful to look at, necessary for appearances, but never truly engaged with. Chioma wrapped her arms around herself, the silk robe doing nothing to warm the chill settling into her bones. When did I become a ghost in my own life? She wondered, not for the first time. Min-jun grabbed his watch from the nightstand, the same Patek Philippe his father had given him when he'd taken over the family's pharmaceutical empire. He fastened it without a word, without a glance, without any acknowledgement that his wife was sitting 3 feet away from him. "There's a charity gala tonight," he said, his voice perfectly neutral, perfectly distant. "My driver will take you to get ready at 4. Not, we have a gala. Not, I'd like you to come with me." Just instructions delivered like he was speaking to his assistant. Chioma's throat tightened. "What if I don't want to go?" The words came out smaller than she'd intended. Min-jun paused, his hand hovering over his briefcase. For a moment, just a fragment of a second, something flickered across his face. But it vanished before Chioma could identify it. "It's important for the family," he said finally. Then he left. No goodbye. No kiss on the forehead. Nothing. The door clicked shut with a finality that echoed through the emptiness. Chioma released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her eyes burned, but she refused to cry. Not anymore. She'd cried enough tears over the past 3 years to fill the Olympic-sized pool in their backyard. The pool Min-jun had built because she'd mentioned once, in passing, that she liked to swim. He'd spent millions on it, had it designed by some award-winning architect, made sure the temperature was always perfect. But he never once joined her in it. That was Min-jun's version of love. Grand gestures from a distance. Expensive gifts delivered by staff. Everything she could possibly need except the one thing she actually wanted, him. Before you keep watching, if this story is hitting different, go ahead and hit that like button real quick. It helps more than you know, and I see you. Now back to Chioma's breaking point. 3 years ago, everything had been different. Chioma could still remember the first time she'd seen Kim Min-jun. She'd been working as a translator at an international medical conference in Seoul. He'd walked into the room like he owned it, which, given his family's influence in Asian pharmaceuticals, he basically did. Tall, devastatingly handsome, with eyes that seemed to see right through the polite masks everyone wore. He'd approached her during the networking reception, asked her about her work with such genuine interest that she'd forgotten he was a billionaire's son. They'd talked for hours. About language, about culture, about her dreams of bridging communication gaps in healthcare. He'd listened like every word mattered. When he'd asked for her number, Chioma had felt like she was floating. The courtship had been intense. Min-jun pursued her with focus that made her feel like the center of the universe. Flowers delivered to her tiny apartment. Late-night phone calls that stretched until dawn. Surprise visits where he'd fly across countries just to have dinner with her. He told her about the pressure of being the eldest son, the weight of expectations, the loneliness of never knowing if people wanted him or his family's power. She told him about growing up between 2 cultures, never quite fitting in anywhere, always translating herself for other people's comfort. "You don't have to translate yourself for me," he'd said, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "I want all of you, exactly as you are." 6 months later, he'd proposed. The wedding had been massive, covered by every society magazine from Seoul to Lagos. Chioma had worn a custom gown that fused Korean and Nigerian elements, cost more than her parents' house. She'd felt like a princess in a fairy tale. But fairy tales, she'd learned, ended at happily ever after. They didn't show you what came next. What came next was Min-jun transforming overnight. The moment the wedding bands were exchanged, something in him shifted. The warmth in his eyes cooled. The easy affection froze. He moved into the master bedroom like he was checking into a hotel room, efficient and detached. Their wedding night, he'd claimed exhaustion and slept in his office. The second night, an emergency at the company. The third night, another excuse. Then the excuses stopped coming because Chioma stopped asking. She tried everything. Cooking his favorite meals, even though they had a full kitchen staff. Learning about his business so she could engage him in conversation. Dressing in clothes she thought he might notice. Nothing worked. He was polite, always polite. He ensured she had everything money could buy. But he wouldn't touch her. Not intimately, not casually. No hand-holding during car rides. No kisses goodbye. No accidental brushes in the hallway. Nothing. The rejection had carved something hollow inside her. She'd started wondering what was wrong with her. Was she not beautiful enough? Not interesting enough? Had he realized marrying someone outside his culture was a mistake? Her friends from before the marriage had slowly drifted away, unable to relate to her gilded cage. Min-jun's family was kind but distant, treating her like a decorative addition to family photos. The staff was professional but not friends. Chioma had never felt so alone while being constantly surrounded by people. Now, standing in the closet that was bigger than her old apartment, staring at racks of designer clothes she never chose, Chioma made a decision. She pulled out her phone and called her sister. "Adis," she said when her sister answered. "I need you to help me find an apartment." The silence on the other end was heavy. "Chioma, are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," Chioma replied, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep living like I'm invisible." That afternoon, while Min-jun was at his office, Chioma began packing. Not everything. She didn't want his money or the things his money bought. Just her personal items. The books she'd brought from her old life. The photographs from before. Her grandmother's jewelry. The traditional fabrics she'd collected from her travels. As she folded her clothes, she found herself crying again. Not from sadness this time, but from a strange sense of relief. She was choosing herself. Finally. She was zipping up her second suitcase when she heard footsteps. Chioma froze. Min-jun wasn't supposed to be home for hours. She turned to find him standing in the doorway, still in his suit, his eyes fixed on the luggage. The expression on his face was something she'd never seen before. Not the usual careful neutrality. This was raw, unfiltered shock. "What are you doing?" His voice was barely above a whisper. Chioma lifted her chin. "I'm leaving." "Leaving?" He said the word like it was in a foreign language he didn't understand. "I can't live like this anymore, Min-jun," Chioma said, and the dam inside her finally broke. 3 years of silence, of swallowed words, of unspoken pain came flooding out. "I can't spend another day in this beautiful house feeling like a stranger. I can't keep pretending that designer bags and luxury cars are substitutes for a husband who actually sees me." "Chioma, I tried so hard," she continued, her voice cracking. "I learned your language. I learned your customs. I smiled at your business partners. I played the perfect wife at every event. But you won't even look at me. You won't touch me. You act like I'm made of glass that might shatter if you get too close." Min-jun's jaw clenched. "That's not, then what is it?" Chioma demanded, frustration and heartbreak warring in her chest. "Tell me what I did wrong. Tell me why the man who couldn't stop calling me suddenly can't stand to be in the same room as me. Tell me why you married me if you were just going to lock me in a mansion and ignore me. To keep you safe." The words exploded out of him with such force that Chioma actually stepped back. Min-jun's chest was heaving, his careful control shattered. "I married you to keep you safe." Chioma stared at him, confusion replacing anger. "Safe from what?" He turned away, his hands gripping the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping him upright. My father didn't just hand me the company because I was the oldest son, he said, his voice rough. I had to fight for it. Against my uncle, against board members who thought I was too young, against competitors who wanted to destroy us. The things I had to do, the decisions I had to make. He stopped, shoulders tense. I became someone I didn't recognize. What does that have to do with us? Chioma asked softly. Everything. Min-jun spun back to face her, and the anguish in his eyes stole her breath. Do you know what happened to my cousin's wife? She was kidnapped, held for ransom, tortured for 3 days before they found her. Do you know about my father's business partner whose daughter was killed in a car bombing meant for him? Do you understand that in my world, love is a weapon people use against you? Chioma's heart hammered in her chest. The moment I realized I loved you, Min-jun continued, his voice breaking, the moment I knew you weren't just someone I was dating but someone I couldn't live without, I understood that I'd made you a target. Everyone who wants to hurt me now knows exactly how to do it. They hurt you. So you married me to protect me. Chioma whispered. I married you so that you'd be under the protection of the Kim name, he said. So that everyone would know touching you meant war with my entire family. So that you'd be surrounded by security and walls and everything that could possibly keep you alive. His hands curled into fists. And I stayed away because if they saw how much I loved you, if they saw one moment of weakness, one look, one touch that showed you were my everything, they'd know exactly where to strike. The room spun. You've been protecting me by pretending you don't care, Chioma said, pieces falling into place. I've been protecting you by making everyone believe you were a business arrangement, Min-jun corrected, his voice hollow. A marriage of convenience. Something I needed for international connections but nothing I actually valued. Because if they knew the truth. He stopped, his throat working. If they knew that I think about you every second of every day. That I come home early just to watch you sleep for a few minutes before you wake up. That every time I leave you, it feels like I'm ripping my own heart out. If they knew any of that, you'd be dead within a week. Chioma's legs gave out. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her mind reeling. I know what it looks like, Min-jun said, moving toward her but stopping himself, that old restraint kicking in even now. I know I've hurt you. I know I've made you feel unwanted and invisible and alone. But Chioma, you are the only thing in this world that matters to me. You're the only real thing in a life full of transactions and power plays and calculated moves. And I would rather have you hate me and be alive than love me and be dead. That's not your choice to make, Chioma said, her voice shaking. What? Whether I take that risk, she said, looking up at him with tears streaming down her face. That's not your choice. It's mine. And you took it away from me. Min-jun's face crumpled. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to control the outcome, Chioma corrected. You were so afraid of losing me that you made sure I was never really yours to lose in the first place. You built a cage and called it safety. You gave me everything except the one thing I needed, which was you. I couldn't, he said, and now his voice was wrecked. I couldn't let myself be close to you because I knew if I started, I'd never be able to stop. I'd want all of you all the time. I'd be selfish with you. I'd risk your safety just to hold your hand. I'd burn the whole world down to keep you with me. And that kind of love is dangerous in my world, Chioma. That kind of love gets people killed. I'd rather live dangerously with you than safely without you, Chioma said fiercely. Don't you understand? These past 3 years, I've been dying anyway. Just slowly. Every day you ignored me, every night you slept in your office, every moment you treated me like I was nothing. That killed me, Min-jun. Maybe not the way a bullet would, but it killed me just the same. Before he could respond, the lights went out. The sudden darkness was absolute, disorienting. Chioma gasped, her heart latching into her throat. Then she heard it, glass breaking downstairs. Shouting. Gunfire. In an instant, Min-jun was on her. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her down to the floor with a controlled urgency that spoke of training. His body covered hers completely, a human shield. Don't move, He breathed against her ear. Don't make a sound. His heart was hammering against her back. She could feel every muscle in his body coiled tight, ready to fight, ready to kill, ready to die. This was the other side of him. The side he'd kept hidden. The side that made grown men afraid. More gunfire. Closer now. Someone was in the house. The panic room, Min-jun whispered. We need to move. Stay low, stay behind me. He pulled her up, his grip on her hand iron tight. For the first time in 3 years, he was touching her with purpose, with possession, with the unmistakable certainty that she was his. They moved through the darkness with practiced silence. Min-jun guided her with confidence that spoke of having planned this exact scenario 1,000 times. Down the hall, through a hidden door in what looked like a linen closet, into a narrow passage she'd never known existed. Behind them, she could hear chaos. Men's voices shouting in languages she didn't recognize. Her security team engaging. The sounds of a war being fought in the home she thought was impenetrable. Min-jun keyed a code into an invisible panel. A steel door slid open, revealing a room that looked like something from a spy movie. Monitors, weapons, supplies. He pushed her inside and sealed the door behind them. The sudden silence was deafening. This is what you meant, Chioma said, her voice shaking as she stared at the screens showing armed men systematically clearing their home. This is why. The Park Syndicate, Min-jun said, his voice cold and controlled even as his hands trembled slightly. Business rivals. They've been waiting for an opportunity. They must have been watching, noticed you packing, realized. His jaw clenched. They realized you were leaving me. So they decided to attack. They decided to take you, Min-jun corrected, his eyes on the monitors. You're worth more as a hostage than dead. They'd use you to destroy me, force me to sign over contracts, dismantle everything my family built. And then, when they'd gotten what they wanted. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Chioma watched the screens, watched these men hunting through her home, and something crystallized inside her. Fear, yes. But also clarity. How long have you been watching these monitors? She asked quietly. Min-jun's shoulders tensed. What? Every day, Chioma said, looking at the setup. You come here every day, don't you? This is where you've been when you said you were in your office. This is what you've been doing instead of sleeping. He didn't answer, but the silence was confirmation enough. Show me, Chioma demanded. When he hesitated, she walked to the monitors herself. And that's when she saw it. The folder labeled with dates. She clicked on the most recent one. The screen filled with footage. Her, reading in the garden. Her, laughing on the phone with her sister. Her, swimming in that massive pool, completely unaware she was being watched. How long have you been recording me? Her voice was barely a whisper. Since the day we got married, Min-jun admitted. I needed to know you were safe. I needed to. His voice cracked. I needed to see you smile, even if it wasn't at me. I needed proof that you were still here, still alive, still real. Chioma scrolled back further. Weeks. Months. Years. Thousands of hours of footage. Her entire married life, documented from a distance by a man who loved her too much to get close. This is obsession, she said, but there was no accusation in her voice. Only understanding. I know, Min-jun said. I told you. If I let myself love you the way I want to, it wouldn't be healthy or normal or safe. It would be this. All-consuming, desperate, the kind of love that devours everything in its path. On one of the monitors, Chioma saw the intruders getting closer to the panic room's location. They had maybe 5 minutes. She turned to face her husband. This man who had starved them both for 3 years. This man who had built an entire surveillance system just to watch her from afar. This man who was, even now, positioning himself between her and the door. Ready to die before he'd let anyone take her. After this, Chioma said, her voice steady despite the fear throbbing through her veins, after we survive this, because we will survive this, we're going to talk. Really talk. About boundaries and communication and the difference between protection and prison. Min-jun's eyes widened slightly. You think I'm leaving you now? Chioma asked, a hysterical laugh bubbling up. When armed men are literally breaking into our house. When you've just confessed that you've been madly in love with me this whole time but were too terrified to show it. She stepped closer to him, close enough to feel his heat. I'm angry at you, Min-jun. I'm furious at the time we've wasted. But I'm not leaving. Not now. Not ever. Something broke in his expression. Chioma, she reached up and grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her. I choose you. I choose this messy, complicated, dangerous life with you. I choose the obsession and the overprotection and the surveillance cameras. But you have to choose me too. Not the idea of me. Not the safe, distant version. Me. All the way. The sound of footsteps stopped outside the panic room. Min-jun pulled her behind him, drawing a weapon from a hidden compartment. His body was tense, ready, lethal. When this is over, he said, his voice low and fierce, I'm never letting you go again. I'm never sleeping in my office. I'm never pretending I don't want to touch you every second of every day. You're mine, Chioma. You've always been mine. And I'm done pretending otherwise. Promise me, Chioma breathed. I promise, Min-jun said. Then the door exploded inward, and he moved. What happened next happened fast. Min-jun fought like a man possessed, with the kind of brutal efficiency that came from years of training and the motivation of protecting the only thing he loved. Chioma watched through tear-blurred eyes as her husband, the man who wouldn't hold her hand, destroyed anyone who tried to reach her. And in that moment, watching him fight for her, bleed for her, she understood. Every cold morning, every distant evening, every night alone had been his way of loving her. Wrong, misguided, painful, but love nonetheless. The kind of love that sacrificed its own happiness for her safety. The kind of love that watched from the shadows. The kind of love that would burn the whole world to keep her alive. When the last intruder fell, when Min-jun's security team finally breached the house and secured the area, when the silence settled heavy and final, he turned back to her. Blood on his hands. Exhaustion in his eyes. But also, for the first time in 3 years, no walls. No distance. Just raw, desperate, undeniable love. Chioma, he said, his voice wrecked. She crossed the space between them and kissed him. Finally. After 1095 days of starvation, after 3 years of dying slowly, after all the pain and loneliness and misunderstanding. She kissed her husband. And he kissed her back like a man who'd been holding his breath for years and could finally breathe. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer. His mouth claimed hers with desperate hunger. Everything he'd held back, everything he'd denied them both, came pouring out. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-jun pressed his forehead against hers. I love you, he said, the words raw and real and unguarded. I have loved you every single day we've been married. Every day I ignored you. Every night I stayed away. Every moment I pretended you didn't matter. I loved you so much it terrified me. I know, Chioma whispered, her hands framing his face. I know now. But Min-jun, you have to trust me. Trust that I'm strong enough to handle your word. Trust that loving me openly won't destroy me. Trust that I'd rather face danger with you than safety without you. I'll try, he said, and it was a vow. I'll fail sometimes. I'll probably drive you crazy with how protective I am. But I'll try. That's all I'm asking, Chioma said. They stayed like that for a long moment, foreheads pressed together, breathing each other in. Around them, security teams cleared the house. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The real world, with all its dangers and complications, pressed in. But in that panic room, holding each other for the first time in 3 years, Chioma and Min-jun finally let themselves feel everything they'd been denying. The love was still dangerous. His word was still violent. The threats were still real. But they would face it together now. No more walls. No more distance. No more pretending. Just the two of them, finally choosing each other completely. One more thing, Min-jun said, pulling back slightly to look at her. Anything. Those surveillance cameras. Yes. I'm keeping them. Chioma laughed, actually laughed, even through her tears. Of course you are. But maybe, he continued, a hint of a smile playing at his lips, the first real smile she'd seen in 3 years, maybe now you'll know I'm watching. Maybe now when I see you smile, it will be for me. It's always been for you, Chioma said softly. Even when you weren't there to see it. Even when I was angry and hurt and ready to leave. It was always for you. He kissed her again, softer this time, slower, like he was memorizing the taste of her. Like he was making up for 3 years of stolen moments. And Chioma kissed him back, pouring everything into it. All her frustration and love and relief and anger and forgiveness. They had a long road ahead. Trust to rebuild. Patterns to break. New ways of loving to learn. But for the first time since her wedding night, Chioma believed they'd make it. Because sometimes love means protecting someone from a distance. And sometimes love means pulling them close, despite the danger. The trick is knowing when to do which. And finally, after 3 years of getting it wrong, Min-jun was ready to learn. As they left the panic room, his hand firmly holding hers, Chioma made a silent promise to herself. She'd never let him hide from her again. And he'd never let her doubt how much she was loved. It wouldn't be easy. But the best love stories never are.